It was a warm summer evening in Texas, LA, when Sarah and her friends decided to have a sleepover in her apartment. The building, a 15-story structure, stood tall against the city's skyline, casting long shadows on the streets below. Sarah's apartment was on the 8th floor, and its windows offered a view of the city lights that stretched out like a sea of twinkling stars. The night began with laughter, movies, and junk food. But as the hours passed and the clock neared midnight, an uneasiness settled over the group. The atmosphere shifted from one of excitement to one of apprehension. Sarah's apartment was cozy, but that night, it felt like a fortress surrounded by an eerie quiet. As they huddled on the couch, sharing ghost stories, a sudden knock on the door jolted them all. The sound echoed through the room, silencing their laughter and freezing them in place. No one was expecting anyone, and at this hour, visitors were uncommon. The knock was followed by a voice, muffled but distinct. "Hello? I know it's late, but I need your help." Sarah exchanged glances with her friends. None of them had invited anyone else, and this voice sounded neither familiar nor friendly. The unease in the room deepened as they considered their options. After a moment of tense silence, Sarah's roommate, Emma, stood up. She was known for her courage, but even she hesitated. With a reassuring nod from her friends, Emma slowly approached the door and cautiously peered through the peephole. Outside, the corridor was dimly lit by a flickering overhead light. A figure stood there, their face partially obscured by a hood. The stranger's presence was unsettling, and Emma's heart raced as she spoke through the closed door. "Can I help you?" The hooded figure shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down and my phone's dead. Can I use yours to call for a tow truck?" The story seemed plausible, but doubt gnawed at Emma's mind. She turned back to her friends and whispered, "What do you think?" Sarah and the others exchanged worried glances. There was a tense pause as they weighed the stranger's request against their own safety. Finally, Sarah nodded, signaling to Emma that she could proceed, but to be cautious. With a deep breath, Emma opened the door just wide enough to maintain a barrier between them and the stranger. She handed her phone to the person and watched as they dialed a number. The dim light cast shadows on their face, making it difficult to discern their features. As the hooded figure conversed with the supposed tow truck service, an unsettling feeling filled the room. The air seemed to grow heavy, and the apartment that had once felt like a safe haven now felt like a trap. The stranger's voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension that didn't go unnoticed by anyone present. Minutes stretched on, and the stranger continued talking on the phone, occasionally glancing at Emma with an almost calculating look. The longer the conversation went on, the more the atmosphere in the room grew oppressive. Sarah could sense her friend's unease, and her instincts screamed that something wasn't right. Finally, the stranger handed Emma's phone back, thanking her for her help. As they turned to leave, Sarah's heart sank. The feeling of dread that had settled over the room refused to dissipate. Without another word, the hooded figure disappeared into the corridor, leaving the door closed but not locked behind them. Tension hung in the air as the group exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah's mind raced, and a cold sweat formed on her brow. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had just encountered something deeply disturbing. "We should call the building security," suggested Mark, one of the friends. Sarah agreed, and Emma immediately picked up the phone to dial the security office. As they waited for a response, the seconds felt like hours. The feeling of vulnerability was palpable, and the shadows that danced on the walls seemed to take on sinister shapes. After what felt like an eternity, a security officer arrived at the door. They listened to Sarah and her friend's account of the encounter, their expression growing serious with each detail. They assured them that they would investigate and patrol the area more frequently. The rest of the night passed in restless discomfort. The initial excitement of the sleepover had been replaced by an unsettling paranoia. Every sound from the corridor made them jump, and every flicker of the lights outside sent shivers down their spines. Morning eventually came, bringing a welcome relief from the suffocating darkness. The sun's rays penetrated the room, dispelling the lingering unease. The security officer had informed them that they hadn't found any trace of the hooded stranger, leaving them with a sense of unresolved tension. As they exchanged stories from the night before, they couldn't help but wonder who the stranger had been and what their intentions might have been. The events of that sleepover would forever haunt their memories, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most unsettling experiences could unfold in the most ordinary of settings. Days turned into weeks, and the incident with the hooded stranger slowly faded from the forefront of Sarah and her friends' minds. They returned to their routines, but the unease from that night lingered like a shadow, reminding them that safety was not always a guarantee. Sarah found herself growing increasingly paranoid. Every time she heard a knock on the door, her heart would race, and her thoughts would immediately jump to that fateful night. She began to lock the door even when she was inside the apartment, a simple precaution that brought a modicum of comfort. One evening, as Sarah sat in her apartment, reading a book, a soft knock on her door shattered the quiet. Her heart leapt into her throat, and she froze, her eyes fixed on the door. She could feel her pulse thudding in her temples as the memories of that sleepover came rushing back. The knock came again, slightly louder this time. "Hello?" a voice called from the other side. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I need some help." Sarah's blood turned to ice. It couldn't be a coincidence. The familiarity of the situation sent chills down her spine. She didn't move, her mind racing through scenarios and possible courses of action. "Sarah, is everything okay?" Emma's voice broke through her paralysis. Sarah's roommate had noticed her tense posture and concerned expression. Sarah whispered, "It's happening again." Emma's eyes widened as understanding dawned on her. "Should we call the security again?" Sarah nodded, her grip on her phone tightening. Her fingers moved quickly as she dialed the security office, her voice barely steady as she explained the situation. Emma stood by her side, offering silent support. As they waited for the security officer to arrive, the knocking continued intermittently, growing more insistent with each attempt. Sarah's fear mingled with frustration, anger welling up within her at the audacity of the stranger. When the security officer finally arrived, Sarah felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They approached the door with caution, listening to the voice on the other side and taking notes. After a few moments of conversation, they turned to Sarah and Emma. "It seems like a different person this time," the security officer reported. "They claim they're looking for someone who lives in the building and got the wrong apartment." Sarah's heart sank. The explanation sounded plausible, but her instincts told her otherwise. She exchanged a worried glance with Emma, who shared her skepticism. "We'll keep an eye on the situation," the security officer assured them. "If you feel unsafe or uncomfortable, don't hesitate to call us again." With a nod, the officer left, leaving Sarah and Emma once again alone in their apartment. The knocking had ceased, but the tension in the air remained thick. The events of that night had ignited a new wave of fear, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Weeks passed, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. The knocking hadn't resumed, and Sarah started to hope that perhaps the ordeal was truly behind them. However, the nights were still filled with restless sleep, and the occasional nightmare, a constant reminder of the lingering fear that had taken root. One evening, as Sarah was returning home from work, she noticed a flyer on the bulletin board in the building's lobby. It announced a community gathering aimed at promoting safety and awareness among the residents. The event was scheduled for the upcoming weekend, and there would be talks from security experts and law enforcement officers. Sarah's curiosity was piqued. She thought it might provide an opportunity to gain some insights into the incidents that had shaken her and her friends. As the weekend approached, She and Emma decided to attend the event, hoping to find some peace of mind. The gathering was well attended, with residents from various floors of the building gathered in a large common area. Security experts spoke about safety measures, the importance of being vigilant, and ways to handle unfamiliar or suspicious situations. As Sarah listened, she realized that she wasn't alone in her fears, and others had experienced similar unsettling encounters. During a break, Sarah struck up a conversation with a woman who lived on the 12th floor. She recounted a story eerily similar to Sarah's, involving a late-night knock on her door and a mysterious stranger asking for help. The woman's voice was filled with unease as she shared her experience, and Sarah felt a sense of validation, knowing that she wasn't imagining things. As the event concluded, Sarah and Emma left with a renewed determination to stay vigilant and to trust their instincts. While the hooded stranger hadn't reappeared, the unsettling encounters had left an indelible mark on their sense of security. Over time, Sarah and her friends developed a strong support system among their neighbors, sharing stories and advice to keep each other safe. The apartment building that once felt like an ordinary place had transformed into a community, united by their shared experiences. While they may never truly understand the intentions of the mysterious individuals who had knocked on their doors that night, Sarah and her friends learned to navigate their fears and transform their vulnerability into strength. The eerie incidents that had unfolded in the heart of Texas, LA, became a testament to the power of solidarity and the unbreakable spirit that can emerge even from the most chilling of encounters.